welcome, my man. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. I am excited to be here.
Same. You've got me so stoked for this conversation. I've been looking forward to this so much. So let's just dive freaking right in. You said that you wanted to start, and I think this is such a fun idea, to start off talking about like difficult conversations, and then you had an exercise that you wanted to run through. Is this right?
Yeah. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Dave Goodall. I'm educated in electrical engineering. I spent 22 years in a Fortune 100 setting, working with Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies as a consultant in services and IT. I worked with clients like Apple Computers, Walmart, Chevron Oil and Gas. So I've been around the big guys, and I never saw myself as a great negotiator or sales, which is ironic because now I teach how to have difficult conversations, how to have how to do sales negotiations. And it's all about our mental programming. And what I've learned is there's a saying, it's like, give me the child until he's 7 and I'll show you the man. They've been saying this for over 400 years because in our first 7 years of our life, we're in a theta state, and that's a hypnotic state where we're learning the rules. How many thousands of rules do we have to be aware of by the age of 7 just to exist in a family? So typically what happens is we go through life in our 20s and 30s, we find ourselves talking negative to ourselves. I suck at this. I can have money, but I can't have a relationship. I can be fit, but I can't have fun. Or I can have fun and money, but I can't be fit. There's these beliefs that are programmed at us by the age of 7. And then we talk negative to ourselves the rest of our lives, telling us we can or can't, what we can or can't do. And what I've learned over the last couple of years, it's our mental programming. It's what happened in those first 7 years where all that programming came in. So, I'm great to be here today. Thank you for having me here. What I've learned is through those 22 years in IT, in the consulting, is a lot of our leadership comes from a black and white perspective. Only 95% of our daily activity is from the unconscious mind. That's our programming. Only 5% of what you do today, you consciously think through. The rest is on autopilot. That's based on our program.
That is
right?
Wild. That alone.
A lot of the conversations I've been having this week is people are like, they said this and I said this and this means that and this means this. And I'm like, okay, let's do an exercise. You down for an exercise?
Oh, 100%.
You want to see how everybody does this, right?
Literally, I'm so stoked. Yeah.
So I believe everything is based on our emotions. So I'm gonna speak a sentence.
Sure.
And I just want you to tell me, what do you see, hear, and feel?
Love it.
Paint the picture of what's going on in your head. Are you ready?
Okay. Ready. See, hear, feel. Got it.
I see a man with binoculars.
Okay.
Paint the picture for me. Tell me what you see.
I'm seeing a man with binoculars. He's wearing actually a dress shirt similar to mine. He feels kind of afraid. And wait, see here. And I hear it's in like the woods. He's like hiding.
Cool. Who's to say I'm not using the binoculars to see the man?
Now there's interesting. Now that's
presuppositions. We presuppose based on our programming.
Oh, wow.
I did it with a girl this week. She's like, I see a peeping Tom creeping on girls trying to look in their windows.
Yeah.
You just saw a man out in the woods, maybe hunting or bird watching. And so it's based on our program. You're not right. Wow. I'm not right. You're not wrong. I'm not wrong.
Yep.
But a lot of times I've been doing this with a lot of teams. They're like, well, Betty said this. And I'm like, well, what does that mean to you?
Come on.
Did you presuppose? What was her intention? I don't believe anybody really intentionally wants to be mean, but like people, right? If you're in a pissed off place, you're going to try and poke the bear, right? So maybe they were being intentionally an a-hole, but you need to ask questions. And that's a great way to defuse someone. If someone comes out throwing like words, hey, what I heard was X. Is that what you meant? And then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, that sounds like an asshole. No, that's not what I meant. So that it's easily diffusable by asking questions.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know, man. What do you think of that exercise?
It was so simple, yet it really highlighted a point that's so fascinating. And it's like you said earlier, that we make so many of our decisions and so much of our programming, our everyday life is based out of the subconscious. It's not in our actual conscious realm. Like when you said that mentally, I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I picture. And then I just assumed everyone else would picture the same thing. It never crossed my mind to think what you actually meant or what you actually could have meant, which is like you're seeing a man through the binoculars.
Right?
Fascinating.
And the exercise can go the other way. You can
Yeah.
say, hey, I'm using binoculars to see a man. Who's to say you're not looking at a man holding a pair of binoculars? So whatever their answer is, you can spin that result any different way you want to. But the point of the exercise is, how many times a day do you hear someone say something and you automatically presuppose the intention or the meaning behind it?
Yeah.
Maybe your mom or dad used to, my wife grew up in a difficult household, and she was like, you should be grateful. You should be grateful. So, there's times where I'm like, hey, babe, where's your gratitude? And it's like, F your gratitude because of the way it was shoved on her programming is, hey, you're bitching and complaining, you should be grateful. And it was just programmed in a bad energy, right? That catabolic energy that we've talked about through the assessment stuff. But yeah, so when you program language patterns, words, whatever state you're in is how your unconscious is going to respond to that situation.
With that, I think I want to take it into this direction. A lot of people tend to react and I've noticed this in myself. I've been very conscious about it the last couple of weeks specifically. But a lot of people tend to react throughout the day depending on their state. We all react depending on their state, but they let their state guide them, I guess is how I would say it. Yeah, which is really interesting when you start to look at, okay, my decisions are based and my actions and how I perceive others. It's based out of my emotions, my state, and then my subconscious. I can control at least two of those, or I can at least work with two of those, and yet we don't. It's very fascinating. So have you found some good steps and good ways to navigate your state?
So there's science behind what you just said, right? We get 2 million bits of data per second to our frontal cortex.
2 million is what you said,
2
right?
2 million bits per second.
That's insane.
You only have 40 neurons on the frontal cortex. You only can process 126 of that consciously.
That's
right.
wild.
So science proves this. So so whatever your emotional state, this is why emotion IQ is so big right now, because if you're pissed off, we're going to presuppose the situation. We're going to connect with the data that's going to allow us to stay in that state. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You ever notice when you're I've done this, it's like something bad happens and all of a sudden I get pissed off and then I look around and I'm like, oh, that's broken too? Oh, what? And it just starts to snowball because now that I'm in that state, I can only see that, right?
Yeah. Oh,
that's why those amazing leaders that can hit those level 5, those level 6, 5, and 6, they see every obstacle as an opportunity. It's like, oh, that happened? Great. Now we know not to do that, as opposed to that happened. Oh, great. There goes our day.
Right.
And I use Thomas Edison a lot, right? He's solution focused, not problem focused. If you're always focused on the problem, when I talk about lower energies, you're going to see more problems. How many light bulbs did Thomas Edison's team blow up before they finally got one to work? If they continually to stay in the state of, well, that sucks, then they would never have pushed through with the creativity to develop it. And you and I talked about this in an earlier conversation. As we're in the lower states, if we're in that catabolic state, did you know that your IQ can drop up to 85%? Your ability to create and tap into the creative, it's gone.
Literally that is probably one of the wildest things I've heard all of the last good 12 months. That was insane when you told me that. Blows my mind. And so you mentioned the Thomas Edison, right? That is another thing that never clicked. Cause it's kind of become a cliche. He worked, it was 1,000 light bulbs before he found the one that worked. Right. And it's just become a cliche. But when you look at it from the perspective that you just mentioned, where you're looking at it and saying, if he was problem focused, he would not have been able to push through. He would not have been able to have the persistence and the creativity to come up with that solution. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, think of the things they did. They put gas, they removed gas, they vacuumed. To think of that outside of the box. I mean, and I love to talk about Elon Musk and the invention of Tesla, right? Tesla wasn't a car company. Most people don't know this. Tesla was created off of a battery company because people brought him the problem of we can't manufacture batteries efficient enough in the United States. And he's like, why? Well, we can't have, we can't supply, and he built a battery company out in Nevada. And he's like, well, hell, if I can build the batteries, let's build the car.
Right. It's like you got the hardest part done at that point.
Right. At that point, we're done. Let's move on. But he stayed solution focused and stayed in that creative state. And he surrounded himself with smart people. And I always use Albert Einstein as another great example. A lot of people don't know this. It's coming out more and more. He was a horrible mathematician. He couldn't do the math. He had the visions to the formulas, and he surrounded himself like in the college setting that could do the calculations for him. He was the visionary that created the theorems, and then people would go run the numbers to see if it worked or not.
Wow. I did not know that. I personally did not know that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
What?
So it's all about, and I know your channel's about leadership. It's about being that creative leader, letting go of your judgments, letting go of your presuppositions, asking clarifying questions. It's the curiosity cat, right, that gets you to the goal. It's those leaders that are extremely curious. What did you mean by that? What did that mean? What does that mean to you? If this is the solution, how do we get there? What do you know that I don't? Here's what I know that you don't, and how do we work together to collaborate to get that outcome we want? We're all connected more than you think. It's just we got our crap in our programming that blocks us from that connectivity to get that creativity to get the outcome we're looking for.
Which is freaking amazing. So this all ties in to obviously this is like the principle of NLP. That's what we're talking about. Can you, so for a lot of people who don't understand, it's like, what is NLP? Can you just kind of give a quick explanation about what that is?
Yeah. Actually, I've got a simple one right on my website, and I'll go read that real quick.
Absolutely. I love that.
NLP is Neuro-Linguistics Programming. Today it would probably, it was a group of doctors and scientists back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, where they saw psychologists and psychiatrists getting extreme success in people shifting to more successes. And it was more or less they had observance, right? There was one particular doctor that was getting exceptional results. And like, well, how do you do that? He's like, I don't know. It's like Michael Jordan, how do you dunk? He can't really break it. He just does it, right? It's a programming. So what they did is they observed these highly successful people and created these processes. It's kind of a pseudoscience. There's not one science fits all, but there's just different paths to take to figure out what will work. And neuro refers to our neurology, right? It's how our brain is wired. I know you and I have talked about this neuroplasticity. They used to believe that once your brain was fixated, you were done. Now they've got neuroplasticity. So my daughter's high functioning autistic, and I've been trying to do a lot of neuroplasticity with her. The way a lot of her neurology wiring was, for me to get across the room for her, right? Think of it in the brain, right? Yeah. The quickest path is a straight line.
Right.
What she would do is she would go to that corner, to that corner, to that corner, and then she'd make it there, right? It's an inefficient path. So neuroplasticity allows us to break down the existing path and make a more efficient path, right? I also talk about this, and it's like, have you ever been driving in a snowstorm? I know you're from Maine.
Oh, yeah.
So, after a fresh snow, the fast lane usually gets cleared first, right? It's like all the tracks, but you got to get off at the exit ramp, right? And so you got to break over into the other lane. Now, if you start driving in the middle lane and it's still snowing, eventually the fast lane fills up, and then the middle lane, that's the new path everybody takes.
Yep, 100%.
So it's not always easy, but that's kind of the easy visualization I can create from neuroplasticity. It's tearing the existing road down that you're using today and creating a more efficient path to the outcome you're looking for. So linguistics is language patterns. We just did an exercise, presupposition. What does language mean to you? It's all different based on everybody's programming. And then programming is how we've stored that. Today it would be apps, right?
Right, literally.
We all know app. That's, this was kind of around when IBM was coming up and the Computer Programming Foundation. So NLP was named back in the 60s, 70s when IBM was programming. And I took a simplistic way, and a lot of people were like, yeah, I hear all about this conscious, unconscious, and how does it work? And I love this analogy that I came up with. It's like we all have something like this in our pocket, right? A smartphone.
Yeah.
First thing you do for a smartphone is you need to make sure the operating system's updated. So you got to have an operating system for the phone to do its basic functionality. The battery can charge. It's like, you don't tell your heart to beat. You don't tell your stomach to swallow or to digest. It's like the operating system, your subconscious takes care of that. Now, to have the phone be functional, we need to load an app, right?
Yep.
So now the app has to interact with the operating system, the unconscious, to work properly. Have you ever installed an app and it's like your operating system is not compatible with this app? Please update now.
Yes.
Okay? I was working with a guy. He was a territory sales manager, had his own territory, and he was getting promoted to VP of sales. So when we were doing some coaching, I'm like, is your operating system, your unconscious, applicable for your upgrade, your promotion to VP of sales. I know you're a great territory manager and you know how to make the sales. How do you now lead a team of 15 people doing what you used to do? What's your programming?
Come on.
Right.
Wow. Oh, yeah. So, I'm still there.
Yeah. So basically the neuro-linguistic NLP is just, what is your programming? So maybe that gentleman had a perspective as the old VP, man, he didn't have a successful marriage. He was always working late. Like, are those beliefs that are true to you? You know, we get these beliefs. Like I said, 5% of our decision-making is conscious. The rest is from our programming. I know it was a long answer to your question, but it's just, it's how we're wired.
Exactly.
But the cool thing is,
yeah,
we can change it.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was headed. Because I'm so glad that you gave the longer answer, because it is so important. A lot of people tend to, myself included, up until literally I had no idea what NLP is until you and I had our assessment, until we had that. And then you explained this, and then I started diving deep into it. And I'm getting trained in NLP by Dr. Matt in like a couple months.
Nice.
So excited, because I literally changed my life when you look at it, because exactly what you said. Yes, this is the programming. Yes, this is how we make decisions. Yes, this is how we view the world, how we interact with people, how we interact with ourselves, the whole shebang. But we can change it. We can upgrade. We can update that software, right? So with for example, that guy that you said you were working with, right? He was moving up in that position, and you were asking him, hey, what do you have the correct operating system? Are you ready? Do you have that upgrade? What are some of the ways that we can change that? What does this look like?
That's great. You need to call me. I went through Dr. Matt James, and I got certified in the mental emotional release, right? And that's where we store our programming, that's where we store our anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt, and then any limiting belief, right? The reason I love this is because my daughter's 16. 16 years ago, my daughter was born. I was hating my job. I just had a lot of poor programming. I was starting to be unhealthy. I was really athletic and fit, and I was just not in I don't want to say depressed state, but I was not in a happy place. And I just went on this journey. I had discovered the law of attraction, The Secret, the movie, and I'm like, there's something to this, because I remember being this go-lucky, happy, rambunctious kid. They called me the tree climber, because I was that kid, like, put him on a leash, otherwise he's gone, right?
Yes,
I'm getting into trouble somewhere, in a good way. Right?
I love it. Absolutely.
I was that curious kid, like, jumping my bike, building ramps, all that kind of stuff. And so a lot of it was just that self-discovery. And every time I turned the corner, I would learn more and learn more and learn more. So a lot of my coaching and teachings is from my personal experience, right? Knowing that it's capable. My daughter was diagnosed with autism when she was 9. So my wife and I went through 9 years of thinking, what's wrong with us? Imagine the stories we told ourselves on how big of a piece of S we were, because we couldn't get our daughter potty trained until she was 4. We couldn't get her to make friends because she just didn't have that social awareness. Like, we didn't know. Once we were diagnosed at 9, I had this epiphany. We sat down with her and I said, you've been diagnosed with this, and it's not a crutch or an excuse. It just means now your mom and dad know what tools we need to put in your toolbox.
That's a beautiful way to go about that.
Right. And I think that's for every person on this planet. We're all born with our individual gifts, and we need to understand what tools we need in our toolbox. And that's where I say that connection and that community. It's like I was saying, Albert Einstein, he did E equals MC squared. He's the one that was kind of first discovered the quantum, right? Before atoms are in existence, we have quantum space. And it was with his visualization and the team he put around him that was able to make that possible. So he had to have a tool, a brain from different areas to make that a possibility. So how do we fix it? Well, MER is a great process to go through. Dr. Matt James got his PhD and has made thousands of changes in people across the world. A lot of his studies was down in the Jamaica slums, and really reduced the murder rate and getting these kids off the streets of just that slum gangster type stuff. But what's amazing is I've had so many executives come through an MER process, and just their self-confidence, their communication, the way they've empowered their teams. I've done MERs where we've taken a sales team that was like in the 30th percentile, finishing in the top 5, just because it's just a switch of the brain and the mindset and the programming. And is rather having a problem focused, they were solution focused. So one of the things I do is I a lot of my clients, I was like, I need you to keep an emotional journal. And they're like, what's that? I was like, every time you get pissed off, I want you to write down 2:00, pissed off. Why? How did you do it? Right? Yeah. The reason I ask people to write down the emotion when they're experiencing conflict, I want you to write down the emotion. I want you to name it. And I want you to tell me what got you to that point. Here's why. I love this story. I got this story from Dr. Joe Dispenza. Imagine we're going to a wedding this weekend. Yeah. Open bar.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Right. We're going to do some shots. We're drinking. And all of a sudden 100%. The high school jam comes on. Right.
Oh yeah. Oh,
now high school jam comes on. iPhones are out. The recordings are going on. Next day you wake up hungover. That video is on YouTube or Facebook and you're looking at that. Now you've got awareness of drunk Gabe at a wedding. Are you going to do things differently next time?
Yeah, one would think. Yes.
One would think, right? I had a girl this week going, "No, man, I'd look good." I'm like, "You'd look good with your dress over your face."
Exactly, like right? Drunk Gabe is not the same. Let's throw that out there.
Right, and it's a metaphorical story, right?
Yeah.
Once you start journaling an awareness of your triggers, a lot of our programming is just like you said, 95% is a trigger-based reaction. If you start creating awareness on your triggers, they automatically remove themselves.
I literally feel like we could drop the mic and be like, "That's it, guys. That's probably the best thing most people have heard."
And then here's the next thing. And this is why MER works. And I've developed a mini MER plan. It's like, what's the goal you want? And it takes you through a list of 12 questions. And I'm going to stir up your crap. It's when you write like question 1, what is it that you want, but you must do, but you don't want to do? And then you're like, crap. So you got to be honest. And then you're like, as you're writing that, what did little Gabe say? Because we always have that little kid voice in our head. Is he talking crap? He's like, you suck. You can't do it. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. And I want you to write that down. And then I want you to circle the emotion. Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you fearful? Are you hurt? Or do you feel guilt? And as you answer all the questions, I want you to tell me what little Gabe said and what emotion. And at the end, all negative emotions are trapped in time. They're in the quantum. You and I are made of atoms.
Come on. Okay. Yeah.
Equals MC squared. Time exists in space. Space is at the atomic level. At the quantum level, time doesn't exist. Our emotions are trapped at the unconscious on our timeline. And then I've got audio files that we go into theta state. Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about this. How do we change our programming? You have to get into a theta state, which is a meditative state. You have to see where the emotions are trapped and you got to let it go. And then step 2 of my MER, we go in and we look at our values. Why is this important? Are your values based on a carrot or a stick? And I'll tell you what, most people, 50% of their values are based on stick.
Yeah.
And the way our ego is programmed, when the beatings stop, we stop.
Yep.
When the carrot's out there and you're like, I can't stop until I get the carrot. So we pull our values, we protect them. Then we have to write a goal. So then I've got another 9 questions that walks you through creating a mantra outcome. And then you read it every morning, every night, because what we most think about, we attract. The unconscious mind, 95%. When you read it morning and night of the outcome you're looking for and all your crap's gone, the unconscious mind, those 95%, you're doing crap and not even knowing why you're doing it. Now we've already set the intention at the unconscious level. You can't not succeed.
Okay. So I want to kind of jump in here real quick. I have a question.
Sure.
The last like 3 or 4 interviews I've done, the last handful, and a lot that I plan on doing coming up here are all kind of based around spirituality. Which is really fascinating. I have been on it going really deep on many different types of spirituality, viewing it from many different angles over the last couple of years. And it's been really fascinating. And so with what you're talking about, this really is really interesting because a lot of what you're talking about, people could hear that and be like, oh, that sounds like this spiritual practice, or that sounds like the process outlined in such and such a spiritual mentality. You talk about mantras, you're talking about meditation, as well as many other nuanced things that you've brought up. Do you think that there is a connection? Do you see a connection? What does that look like in
Oh,
your mind?
definitely. I've got it on my board right there.
Mm,
We all have a foundation on our physical, which is
mhm,
our physical and financial.
okay.
So we need to get our physical and financial foundation built for our life. Next level up that is our emotion. We need to be aware of our emotional programming. We need to know our mental.
Hmm.
Can we leverage our mental thinking? Can we control our mental and emotional processing? Are we mentally conscious, aware, strong enough to understand that that's an emotional programming, or have we programmed our emotions? And up top is our spiritual journey. We have to be physically fit. We have to have our financials. We have to have our mental and emotional. Then we can connect to the spiritual realm. We're all connected. We're all floating atoms in space,
Right.
right?
Right.
And and scientists are proving, what is it, the God gene now? They're kind of. I'm doing this research.
Yes.
It's like, and for me, it's like I've been on these spiritual journeys. I've been on this, spiritual guides, and I've got intuition. And you pull your pendulums, and I've done all that stuff. But I'm like, I'm a scientist. I'm an engineer. I've got a bachelor's in engineering. Like, I want the science. And then now it's like I've come to the conclusion that it's like this. Wi-Fi exists, but can you see it?
No.
So, and I don't want to say I was once an atheist, but I was once grew up in a Christian faith, and I saw a lot of hypocrisy. So it made me angry, right? But now, once I start to see, and in the beginning was the Word. That's a statement in the Bible, right? And I'm not from a religious perspective, but the Word was the Word, and we create from Word. You go scientifically back to Albert Einstein, the quantum, atomic. Now they're doing science like, when we look, it's there. When we look away, it's gone. Is it our word and our visual? Is it ours? Do we create it into existence based on the belief? Like, there's so much scientific unknown. We don't know. Like, how come you can take an atom and split it, put it on two opposite ends of the earth, tickle one and the other one responds? How are your and my atoms not somehow? I can't see it. I can't prove it. But I mean, scientists are starting to prove this.
Yeah.
And I know you went down a spiritual path, the question around spirituality, but I think it's being able to have that physical, financial, that mental, emotional to explore our spiritual journey, because we are all connected. We all, that the moral belief of my company's TapMental. If you could tap into your mental programming, what could you create? What could you do? But my belief is there's no such thing as a bad person, just a bad behavior and a bad strategy. It's our programming. Yeah. And if we could flip the bit on one thing, what would that do for your life?
Come on. Huge.
And everybody's different, because the spiritual journey, like the root foundation, and I talked about the 5 negative emotions. They're the root core that creates these limiting beliefs. The belief is the core foundation emotion is love. There's no other emotion other than that. If we could all experience just love, what, as a society, what could we create? No, that's pipe dream and that's spirituality, but I think it's this karmic journey as societies. How do we bring more love into the conversation? How do we let go of our own crap to be able to achieve that? But I love spirituality, but I've taken the scientific approach. Yeah. The brain frequencies. I mean, I used to do an oscilloscope in college, but now they're doing, was it beta, alpha, theta, delta? So beta, like, have you ever been in a panic? Oh yeah. That's the frequencies. It's incoherence in the brain. That's a beta state. Alpha, have you ever been in watching TV? Watching, and you're calm and you're watching. That's that alpha state, alpha theta. They call it a program. Watch your program, because you're in an alpha theta. Now I'm programming your unconscious. That's why TV's good and bad.
I was actually about to ask that, but that will take this into a totally different conversation. So keep going. Maybe I'll bring that up later.
Yeah. So, and then that's why they say, give me the child for the first 7 years, because when an infant's born, they're in a delta state. They're in that sleep state. So our deep sleep at night is a delta state. And that's where the body's like rehealing, rebooting. But if you look at a baby, the first year or two, they're in that delta state. Then the theta state's the programming. They're not listening to us. They're watching and observing. They're learning the rules. But we can achieve theta state through meditation. That's where we can, I talk about the mini MER. That's where we write out the goal we want. We're looking for all the conflicts. You can take those conflicts into a meditative state, listen to some theta frequencies, and you can rewrite it. Come on. You do your mantras, and it's meditation and then repetition. Stephen Curry, one of the best 3-point throwers in the league. Why? He believed he could, and he's the last person off the court. He can't leave until he throws 10 threes in a row. He's got some sort of mantra belief that I will be the best thrower. It's a belief and repetition. It's like that for everything. If you believe you can't have a good marriage, you're right. If you believe you're going to be broke, you're right. And,
wow.
But I think that's how it ties into spirituality. But learning how to let go of your crap, ask for help, fit into a community. Yeah. That's been my whole journey as I've searched out people that were successful in an area that I wanted to be successful in. Like, how did you do it? Teach me. Like, I want to learn your strategy. Like, what you're doing looks easy. Like, programming. It's almost like the Matrix, right?
Right. Yeah. So
hopped in the helicopter, download it.
Literally, just like that. What's so fascinating is you see some people, and this is a strategy that I've used, is exactly that. You find those people that are better than you, better at something than you, and you say, okay, how can I do that? But I want your opinion on this, because I have, over the last decade, I have used that and gone to an extreme where I've said, okay, yes, I will find someone who's better at this than me and do that in person. But also, for example, growing up, I was extremely emotional. I was actually, growing up, I was very unemotional. But then when I hit my teen years, I just became a whirlwind of emotions. And over the last decade or so, 5 years, decade, somewhere in that range, I've really wanted to hone in, okay, I'm not going to make all of my decisions out of however I'm feeling in that moment. And so what I started to do is I started to study Sherlock Holmes, the epitome of logic and reason, the epitome of making decisions out of pure, no emotion, and started saying, to try and reprogram my brain to say, if I were Sherlock in this situation, how would I respond? How would he respond? And kind of using that, even though technically obviously he's not real. Technically, he's not a friend that I can interact with personally. But when I dive into the writings of Sherlock Holmes enough, I kind of glean some of that programming from him. Does that work, or am I just out in left field?
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because when I was going through a lot of stuff with Dr. Matt, and he's like, who had a superhero growing up? Who was your superhero? And then we did an exercise. It's like, I loved Superman as a kid. I can't tell you how many times I threw on a cape and I ran around the house, but there were certain things that I saw Superman could do, and I believed I could do. This is where, we all need to be educated, but I think the education, the way it's set up today, it almost dumbs us down, because at an early age, we're told to stop daydreaming, but that's where the creativity stops. But what people wear those bracelets, what would Jesus do? So their teachings in regards to what they believe Jesus is capable of, they when they're going to make a decision, like, oh, what would Jesus? It's just a reminder. It's like, am I thinking with my programming? But I've heard some of the conscious teachings from what Jesus was trying to share. If I were to think from his perspective, what is possible in this situation? So we all have to lean into something. And there's a guy, I was going to look at it here. There's a gentleman, great story. Jim Quick. You seen Jim Quick?
No.
I think he's I don't know. He's like an Asian descent of some sort. I don't know. I'm not being racist. I don't know what he is, but he's in looks like an Asian Filipino or something. But
sure.
As a boy, he fell and hit his head on a radiator, whatever they're called in the house.
Radiator thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so from that event, he saw himself as an idiot, as dumb, not as smart. But he loved the X-Men. And the person he was most fascinated with is who's the guy that was in the wheelchair that could tap into people's brains, and he had this.
Okay. I'll be honest. I've actually never seen the X-Men, but I've seen enough previews of them to visually picture who you're talking about.
But he's all about neuroplasticity and rewiring your brain. I love these guys that get into the science. And it was just, he was so passionate about fixing your brain. If you ever get a chance, look him up. Jim Quick. He's got some great stuff on YouTube.
Making it out right now.
He said there was a moment where it was so weird, because he had developed these processes on how to get smart, how to memorize, how to learn, how to put stuff in your memory. I mean, there's eye patterns. We can go geeky for the next 2 hours on how we program, how we stall, how we recall.
Oh, yeah.
But he said after really diving in, he said it had been 8 or 10 years. And he always wanted to be that man on X-Men. He found himself on the site of the X-Men taping, and he was coaching the actors on how to learn their lines quicker. He's like, my whole life I dreamed of being an X-Man, and here I am as the coach for lines for the actors. He goes, I got to be an X-Man.
Wow.
Because I got to do it. Because that's the power of our imagination and creation. Tapping into the spiritual ability, our beliefs. So to answer your question, Sherlock Holmes, yes. Whatever we believe, yes. You know, it's just whatever you need to get you that power, that belief, that feeling, that emotion to believe what's possible or true.
That is fantastic. That is so, when it comes to emotion, because we brought that up a lot in this conversation, because it's like a cornerstone to here. I have heard some people talk about how they have difficulty, not regulating, not controlling, it's not the right word, but even managing and being like, okay, I'm going to create this feeling, or like this is how I'm going to feel. This is how I'm feeling, like identifying and then creating emotions. Do you have any tips or advice for people who have difficulty with that?
So repeat the question again. I just want to make sure I understand clearly.
For sure. So do you have any advice or any tips for people who have struggle or have difficulty with identifying and then creating the emotions within themselves?
Yeah. Ultimately, it's just step one is awareness, right? I used to recognize, I would even go to the dentist and I would find myself like there's no reason. I'm in the chair. They're not doing anything painful. They're just polishing my teeth. Like, why is my butt clenched? Why is my butt why am I stiff? But I learned there, like I was in that catabolic state. Remember in our assessments, we talk about anabolic and catabolic energy. Catabolic's that fight or flight, that defense mode. Yeah. From my awakening and my realization is I probably lived 60-70% of my life in a catabolic state, always on the defense. Difficult childhood, don't need to get into it, but not from a trauma perspective, but enough that I felt I had to protect myself all the time, always on the defense. Yeah. I think those people that live in more of that catabolic state is hard to identify because they've normalized anger, fear, guilt, hurt, right? So, what anger means to me could be totally different from you. Right. So that's why I start with just a journal, and you can grab your phone. Hey, I just got triggered. Name it. Identify it. What was it? Was it anger, sadness, fear, hurt, or guilt? Great. Teach me how you do it. Like everything it's like a code function. When you enter something in an app and you're looking for an output, it has to go through a process to get you the outcome. So what I work with my clients is like, okay, you got pissed. What do you want to call it? Anger. Great. How'd you do it? I'm going to be you. Walk me through the steps. When do I decide I got to be angry? Teach me. I have so many people that was like, man, I just got so much anxiety. Cool. I'm going to be you today. Teach me how to do anxiety. I want to do it just like you. How do I do it? And they're like, well, I do this. I'm like, hold on. I'm missing a step. What happened here? Like, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? At what moment do you decide anxiety? And I can dumb down anxiety and depression real quick. Anxiety is taking a past experience that you believe to be bad and you're throwing it into the future. Hasn't even happened yet, but you're leveraging your past experiences from crap and you're throwing the future. Depression is you've got a past crap experience and you're sitting in it. You haven't embraced the learning. Yeah. Did that answer your question? I mean,
I so appreciate that. That was very practical.
Exploring.
Yeah. Exactly. It's super practical, super exploring. That's really the right word. With that, another thing you've mentioned is triggers quite a few times. So how do I want to word this question? We all of our decisions, actually, I'm going to tie in like a lot of what we've talked about. Most of our decisions are based out of the subconscious. Like that's been 95% proven. Of them. Yep. Exactly. That's been proven. That's there. And what rules the subconscious? Actually, I guess this is what I'm going to ask: is what rules that subconscious? How do we create that subconscious? Like, how is our subconscious been created?
From birth to 7.
That's why the whole birth to 7 approach. Wow.
How many thousands of rules do you have to learn by the age of 7 just to exist in your household?
Thousands.
How many more thousands of rules do you have to learn to show up to school? How many more thousands of rules do you have to learn to exist in a society? 0 to 7, you're in that theta state almost all the time. Theta, delta, a little bit of alpha. That's where it's like, and I learned this as a parent. I've got a 16 and 14-year-old daughters. I've been married for 21 years. And I wished I had known this when they were first born, because now I'm having to go back and help them rewrite, because 14, 16, I've still got a chance to teach them how to do it. And they're doing phenomenal. But that programming, I was angry the first 7 years of their lives. So they saw dad be an a-hole, right? Yeah. And I still get little triggers. I'm still working on. I'm not perfect.
For sure.
And I'm straight up honest. Yeah. So right now it's just witnessing, I have a lot of talks with my youngest. My youngest is a lot like me. A lot of her triggers were my old triggers. And I have to have those conversations. Hey, what you're doing, I taught you. You learned by watching me. And I'm sorry, but you're going to get the learning, and we're going to teach you how to learn and move on and grow. But it's that theta state. It's the delta, theta, alpha is where the programming occurs. And it's not from listening. It's mostly from watching and observing.
Wow. Hence the 1 through 7, ages 1 through 7.
Give me the man, give me the child till they're 7, and I'll give you the man or woman.
Yeah. Wow.
Because it's based on the programming, right?
Yeah.
How many of your friends can go out to a club and can get 3 or 4 phone numbers, and there's another one of your friends that sits with his head down almost all night and his phone? Yep. He never learned the strategy to initiate a conversation. There's a belief that I can't talk to girls. I don't know how. Hasn't learned how to read facial recognition. Like Dr. Matt James was awesome. He was like, look, I never learned how to interact with girls. He was sharing a story. He was in first class on a plane, and there was a stewardess like hanging all over him the whole thing. And then one dude's like, dude, you going to get her numbers? Like, oh, she doesn't like me. he couldn't read it because he never learned that strategy. But here's the irony. He's got a teenage son who's now in college. He took his son out with his boys and taught him what to look for when girls, like, he could see it for others, but couldn't see it in himself.
Wow.
So he imprinted the strategy into his son. He's like, yeah, now my son's kind of a player. He can get any girl, start a conversation. It's like, he's like, I wanted to fix that for my son.
Yeah, that's
because
really
I never
funny.
had.
Right.
It's programming. Really, it's observing. It's witnessing. It's participating. VAK is what we talk about. What do you see? Visual. What do you hear? Auditory. What do you feel? Kinesthetic. And then we've got smell and such, but smell and taste. Right. But the 3 primaries, VAK, visual, auditory, kinesthetic.
Right. It's so, I love all of this. And I could talk for hours, but I wanted to share a quick example of just how powerful this stuff is. So over the last month, I've done this process about 5 different times to 5 different people. And so it's not like a lot, but it's enough to really make me excited. And it's just reprogramming how some of my friends, I've literally just used guinea pigs, how they view food. So like one of him, my business partner, actually, I was like, hey, what is the food that you want to give up the most? And he was like, I want to give up these Lay's chips. And I was like, fantastic. I'm like, what do you hate? And he's like, I hate beets more than anything. And so we walked through a process where we did the VA, the visual auditory
that's a switch pattern. That's an NLP switch pattern.
Exactly.
It's a like to dislike. We're mapping, and it's basically what it is it's based off Pavlov's law. Remember the dog? Get the dog to salivate. That's all we're doing. The hypnotic trancing is just creating a different pattern to the unconscious. The road to which the decision follows to make the outcome. Right. That's all. That's all NLP is doing. Is just it's kind of. When you talk about hypnosis, people think, oh, you're going to make me cluck like a chicken. It's like, no, we are all in a hypnotic trance, probably once every 45 seconds, and we wander once every 10. It's natural. Have you ever driven down the road for 3 to 5 miles and be like, oh, we're like, that's a hypnotic trance. Like your unconscious took over. You went into La La Land and the body took over.
Absolutely.
So that's an NLP switch pattern when you talk about there, like to dislike. You're just mapping it over.
Oh, so simple. And after the process, I was like, because right before I was like, hey, right before we started, I was like, if I had a bag of Lay's chips right here, how much would you want them? And he looked at me and he was dead serious. He's like, if it was here, I wouldn't be talking with you. I'd be stuffing my face. And I was like, that's great. So then we did the pattern. And then after I was like, so here, I was like, if we imagine a bag of Lay's chips here, would you want him? And he literally curled over and like grabbed his stomach. And he's like, that's so, I can't even think about it. And he was feeling that same way for about 4 or 5 days after. And And it's so I say that just to say it is incredible how powerful our brains are. And when we can look at the patterns that they work and really learn to speak the language of our mind, then we can start changing everything around us and we can start taking back that control.
Yep. I had a client just over the last week. We were doing some transition, and her company was starting to offer her opportunities in other territories, and she was looking at how her income, the patterns of her income, had slowly declined over the last 3 years as opposed to increased. And it's like, so we just sat down, did the mini MER. Like, okay, where's the anger? Where's the sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt attached to the story? What is the outcome you want? And she's like, well, really what I want is I want almost a guaranteed $200,000 income. Great. What has to, and almost like the Swiss pattern, where's the shit buried?
Yep.
What's the outcome look like?
Yep.
And after going through it and practicing it, almost like a switch pattern, but I do it from an MER process. She negotiated, she took over a bigger territory, she got a huge promotion, and her bonus could create over a trajectory over 200K this year.
Wow.
But just rewiring her thought process, we upgraded the operating system of what was possible. And she leaned in, protected her values, and dude, I'm like, wow, it's that simple, right? It's not, I don't know how to say that. It's easy, but not simple. Like you got to put in the work. You know what I mean? You got to really put in the work. It's an easy process, but you got to do the work. You got to be curious, right? You got to have that curious mind.
So how do you develop that curious mind? Because we've brought that up probably 3 or 4 times in this interview already. How do you cultivate that curiosity?
I don't know how to answer that question because I've been that why kid my entire life. You know, I grew up around engineers. You know, that's like someone came down and handed you a box that could solve every problem in the world. What would you do? Would you use it or open it up to figure out how it works? I'd be the first one with a screwdriver.
Yeah.
You know, my buddy and I were always told, he's like, you're the kids that void warranties. I'm like, yeah, I'm taking the screws out of the back. How's this work? Right.
It's so funny.
I think you're born with it, but I think, you know, again, to practice what I preach, you can create that process to be curious. And that's what a lot of the people I work from a leadership perspective, I said, when someone says something and triggers like that catabolic response, that fight or flight, this is where your curiosity needs to touch in place. What did you mean by that? I heard this. Is that right? And it's difficult because now, like, I saw Will Smith the other day, and it resonated with me because most people, when the pain starts, we quit. And he was talking about an experience where he went skydiving for the first time. You know, we loaded up on the plane. I did this too. I got on the plane. We went up to 12,000 feet. The light goes green. I'm strapped onto the back, the chest of some dude, and it's go time. It's now it's getting real. The shake, the tremble. It's like, what's going to happen? I've got all the visualization, what I think's going to happen. And all of a sudden we're at the door and the air's in my face. And all of a sudden I feel him let go and we just roll out and do a flip. And you're like, that is the coolest thing ever. But most people get to that point where the obstacle is there and they quit. The glory is on the other side of the obstacle. You know, and that's the one thing that I learned on my entire journey. People quit at the obstacle. We should celebrate the obstacle because the reward is right on the other side.
It's right there.
It's right there. It's like, so now, like, I can't remember the last time we spoke. 103 days ago, I tore my Achilles tendon. My left hand, complete tear. And I was skateboarding. You know, people are like, oh, you're 50, Dave. What are you doing skateboarding? I'm like, I will skateboard until my heart stops. Like I was the Tony Hawk crew. I was the kid building ramps. I was working with BMX X Game athletes. You know, I still, I've done Ironmans. I've done mountain bike racing. I did like I said, I was that tree climber. And, and they're like, oh man, that must suck. I'm like, we'll see. I'm like, it required me to slow down. It required me to create the mini MER process. It allowed me to do it for myself. I've walked several hundred people through the mini MER. Every time I do the output and I create the mantra, I get that's gold. And I have to ask myself, if I had not torn my tendon, would I have had the downtime or the ability to slow down to create this possibility to have a positive impact on thousands of people across the world? So was my 100-day struggle, what was the gift? It gave me self-confidence. It gave me awareness. Did it suck? Did it hurt at times? Yeah. But, I can look at it as an obstacle and that happened to me, or what was the purpose of this and what's the outcome and the capital gain I get from this experience? You look for crap, you're going to find it. You look for glory, you'll find it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Wow. It's so true. It's so true. That is a beautiful way to look at it, especially coming out of 2020, where a lot of people, I know a lot of people where that was like a most challenging time for them. But it's exactly that. Like yes, it's challenging, but what are you looking at? What are you putting your focus, your attention, your energy on? Are you being problem focused or are you being solution focused? So crucial.
And I know we're wrapping up, but there's a statement I heard yesterday from a beat poet, and it has stuck with me, and I use it with my clients all the time as well. There's those that play the game, and there's those that don't. Then there are those that don't even know it exists. What game are you playing, and what rules are you using to play that game? What rules do you need to shift? What rules do you need to keep on to? Are you the one that doesn't even know the game is being played? It's because it's kind of all a game. To answer your question is how do you get the curiosity? Dude, we're in a game.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the journey, not the destination. What are the mini stop points? If you hopped in a car in Florida and drove to California, would you blinders and drive all the way in? Or would you hey, Grand Canyon, let's stop. Hey, it's a journey, man. Get out of the car, experience life. Where's the fun? Be curious.
Come on.
Best leaders are curious. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? How can I learn? How can I help them learn? What do I need for the next obstacle? Let's celebrate the obstacle. I just got knocked down.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. There's, who was it? The lady who created span. I want to say it was spandex. Might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was spandex. When she was a kid, her dad used to talk with her and her brother every day at the dinner table, right? And instead of asking, "Oh, how was your day? What did you do well? How do you feel?" Instead, what he would ask is, "What did you fail at today?" And it's an when I first heard that, I was like, "Wow, he kind of sounds like a dick. That kind of sounds like a terrible thing to ask." But then I started looking into it and started realizing why he would ask that, because if you aren't pushing yourself far enough to fail every day, then you're not pushing yourself. Then you're not playing the game. You don't even realize the game exists at that point.
Yeah. This is ironic. And this is you can't make this stuff up, the connection that you just brought that up. And I heard a quote last night that I wrote down: be willing to fail, but unwilling to quit.
Come on.
I swear to God, last night I was going through something, and at midnight I wrote it down right here on my list: be willing to fail, but unwilling to quit. And it's so true, because the obstacle, the failure is where the learning is. The learning is going to give you the power to move, to take the next step. You got to get knocked down, but you got to get up. Like I said, I started riding a bike when I was 3 years old. You know how many times I fell on my face riding my damn bike? And it's sad because, our children are programmed by our parents. I've seen so many kids wreck on their bike and the parents are like, "Oh, we're done with the bike.
Yeah.
You're going to get hurt."
Yep.
Now they've got this belief that, well, I can't do difficult things. I can't learn. You got to let your kid fall on their face. And it sucks. I have a parent of teenagers, and my youngest daughter's she's in 8th grade. She's on a high school travel team, and she's already been talking to college, and she's already been doing this. But we're on the team last year. The team, and she got cut at the World Series, and it was devastating. She's dyslexic. She's got some, and the coach was like, "Are you even good enough to figure out the call signs?" Because the dyslexia, sometimes it morphs her left and right, but she's very athletically talented. I said, "Babe, I don't, and it's funny, on the ride home, she was like, "Did you see how so-and-so played and how so-and-so played?" I was like, No. We're not going to blame everybody else. What did you do right? What did you do wrong? And what is the end goal? She's like, "I want to play in college." I'm like, "We're not going to blame everybody. What could you have done differently?
Yeah.
What are you really good at?" Within 3 weeks, we're on a college recruit team. And since this new team, she's been talked to by 2 colleges.
Wow.
I was like, had we not gone through that experience, had you not fallen on your ass, and had you not, hung in there, would you be on this team now with these opportunities? No, everything kind of happens for a reason. But be unwilling to quit, but willing to fail. Again, I know Wi-Fi exists. I can't see it.
Yeah.
I know when we hold on to the goal, you'll get there. And if not, you're going to get the learnings. You may even find something better.
Yeah.
How many times have you seen friends of yours that set a goal, didn't get to that goal, but found something even better?
Come on.
Right?
Oh yeah. My word. We are officially running out of time, which is so unfortunate. This has been so much fun. I know, literally. Man, thank you so much. Before we go, though, I want you plug everything you've got. I don't usually give the people, I don't usually do this, but I know you can help so many people, and I would love to be able to help you as much as I can. Plug everything you've got.
Well, what I'm trying to do is I'm in the process of developing this mini MER course. It's going to be all the questions you need with audio files and how to put yourself in the theta state and all that. You can connect with me at TapMental, TapMental.io. Tap into your mental programming. I'm on LinkedIn under David Goodall. You'll see it's got my TapMental logo. I'm on Instagram under David_Goodall. And then in Facebook, I've got my company TapMental there as well. But I'm looking to change the world, man. I'm not looking to be a headliner. I'm looking to be a kitchen table conversation, right?
Yeah.
Because energetically, you change one person, it changes a community.
Everyone. Thank you so much for your time. I have learned so much, as I always do when we have these conversations. Thank you so much for this, man.
My name is Annette Wittenberger. I am the founder of A Wild Ride Call Life and